All right, welcome to Take Two. This is Wando's resident sports talk show where Jackson and I will debate every aspect of professional and collegiate and high school sports for your entertainment. Let's get started with the most obvious order of business. NFL playoffs, AFC and NFC championship games were last weekend. A lot of controversy surrounding the end of those games, but for results said and done, the Los Angeles Rams will face the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 53.
Unfortunately.
Now let's talk about those games. So there's a lot of controversy about the officiating in both games. Jackson, I'll let you start.
The big one that everyone is talking about is the blatant pass interference that they did not call against the Rams in the final couple minutes or so of the game. That basically, some are saying, costed the Saints the game because they could have run the clock out.
Well, when you look at those games, you look at the storylines going into those games. You had the four best teams, I think, all year. The four best quarterbacks, four of the best quarterbacks: Jared Goff, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees.
Yeah, that's.
You have four great teams, four great head coaches. Played two great games of football.
But you know what wasn't great? The officiating.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Is despite all that, two overtime games that had fantastic storylines, but they were two of the worst games I'd ever seen just because the wrong two teams won is an objective matter. So the question I think we should discuss is there's going to be a lot of talk about rule changes and maybe reviewing penalties, because there was the obvious pass interference that cost the Saints the game, and then the absurd roughing the passer call that went against Kansas City that likely changed the outcome of that game. So I guess the question is, should penalties become reviewable next year in the NFL?
I think undisputably they should be. College football does it. I don't understand why the NFL doesn't do it.
College football doesn't review.
Oh no, I'm thinking of something else.
Yeah, well, but I think it's a legitimate point. The problem would be if you if you're going to say, okay, penalties are now reviewable. If you look at what happened to the New Orleans Saints play, they didn't throw a flag. So it'd be really difficult to work out a rule where you could retroactively go back and say, throw a flag on a play where there wasn't a flag. I can understand taking a penalty back on a play where a flag was thrown and shouldn't have been, but I don't know how it would work the other way around. It's logistically something that probably could be worked out, but at the end of the day, the refs just got to make that call. I don't think there's something that can happen in the rules to make it, at least by next season, so penalties are just straight up reviewable. Like, you can retroactively throw a flag, but at the end of the day, the officials just got to call that, and calls have been getting missed all year, so the NFL just needs to make a lot of changes in their officiating staffs, because that's simply inexcusable. You can't miss that call in a preseason game, let alone a game that sends a team to the Super Bowl.
And I think another big topic that should be discussed is whether they should change the rules of overtime, which I definitely think they should. I think both teams should have a chance to score.
Absolutely, and it's absolutely insane at this point that a coin toss can decide the result of a game.
Coin toss is I think that's just absolutely absurd.
Yeah,
why didn't Patrick Mahomes have a chance?
Yeah, like college football. I mean, you look at the way college football does it. Every team gets a possession from 25, and each team gets a chance until a team wins. That's at least fair. The idea that we have where a coin toss, and if you score a touchdown, the other team doesn't get a chance, it's ridiculous. And coin tosses should not be deciding who goes to the biggest game in American sports.
And I think that shouldn't be. I don't even think there's an argument against it.
Yeah.
Because why shouldn't the other team have a chance to score?
Yeah. Let's shift to this. Basketball season's approaching the All-Star break, and James Harden been playing out of his shoes, averaging 50 points a game over the last 5 games. It's just all-time stuff.
Pretty much.
But the question is where does James Harden rank now after this last run as an all-time offensive player, as an all-time 2-guard? Where does he rank on that list all-time?
I think 2-guard, it's around 5 or 6. 4, 5, or 6. I think the players that are undoubtedly above him, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and then the ones that I think are disputable would be Dwayne Wade and Jerry West.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be my two that I think are arguable. I'm going to give it to Dwayne Wade just because of the fact, he basically right when he got in the NBA, he won a championship and had an amazing finals. Whether that series was rigged or not, he still played out of his mind.
Yeah. My caveat with James Harden has always been this, is that he always he's an incredible scorer, he's incredibly talented, he's an incredible shooter, incredible finisher, basically across the board as an offensive player, he's incredible. But for him to reach that next level, that all-time great level, to put him on par with a Kobe or an MJ or a D Wade of players his position, or a Jerry West, he's going to have to translate it to late game situations in the playoffs.
I would have to agree with you on that.
You look at some of his he does turn the ball over a lot, but I'm actually going to give him a pass on his turnovers, because when your usage rate is as high as his is,
and
you're going to turn the ball over.
I agree with that. There's a lot of controversy about his usage rate, and I don't really understand why, especially right now. Who else on the team should be handling the ball?
Yeah. Well, see, here's the thing: it's not just. I was looking back at some playoff statistics from the previous years, and not only was James Harden not his normal self, there were games,
I know,
virtually in which he disappeared. There was.
I remember.
In the Western Conference Finals last year, a series that Houston played really well in and had a good chance of winning.
Except for Game 7, where they, missed a lot of threes.
James Harden shot 0% from 3 in the final 3 minutes of the fourth quarter in all 7 games. He didn't make a 3 in the final 3 minutes of the game in crunch time, and he shot 25% from the field. So that's just an area where, when the lights are the brightest, he's got to step up in those moments if he wants to. If we're gonna put James Harden on the same level as some of those other all-time greats, he's got to be able to show up in those moments.
I would have to agree with you. If he wants to surpass, Dwayne Wade or Jerry West, I definitely think he has to not only just perform, but he has to have more playoff success. Last year, I thought, was his best chance at winning a championship, especially now that the Warriors are basically unbeatable.
Yeah, and he's been dealt some tough cards playing in the same conference as an all-time great Golden State team with 5 all-stars. Probably it's one of the greatest rosters ever assembled. So I'm not saying it's a disappointment that he hasn't made a finals. It's just that he's not. It would require something extraordinary for his team to make it to the finals in a conference with that Golden State team. But he's an extraordinary player, and I think there is a legitimate case to be made that if he played up to that level, if he played up to his regular season level in the postseason, there's a chance that Houston could get there.
But as much as I love James Harden, I love the Houston Rockets, I don't think there's no chance that they're going to do that this year, because I'm almost positive, I may be wrong about this, I'm almost positive he's going to burn out.
Yeah, well, that's just the thing, is he uses it,
and that's not really his fault right now. He has to have such a high usage, and he has to have the ball in his hands and play the most minutes in the NBA because of all the injuries, and because of the fact the Rockets bench is probably one of, if not the worst bench in the NBA.
Yeah, and that's just where it's a tough dilemma with him, because if you look at the greatest player of this generation, and LeBron James, he's always meh in January. His numbers are always the worst in December, January. He doesn't play as hard, but he paces himself really well. And I think there's a lot of truth to the fact that James Harden, it's he's not going to be able to sustain this, and it's not necessarily his fault. He has to play hard because he has no help on that team.
Yeah, that team was 14th in the Western Conference until he started really pushing himself. Mike D'Antoni has this whole thing about it, how he's been practicing and pushing himself harder than he's ever seen him do.
Yeah, so he's just going to have to be able to manage that a little bit better in the future if he wants to get to a championship. Now, last thing we'll talk about.
The heartbreaker of last night.
Yeah, and Victor Oladipo, most improved player in the NBA last year. Really great story. For the Indiana Pacers, will be out for the remainder of the season after
a ruptured quad tendon in his right knee.
It's horrible. It's horrible for Indiana. It's horrible for Oladipo. You feel for those fans because they've gone through this before. But at the end of the day,
Danny Granger and the Pacers have historically gone through injuries, especially in the 2000s.
Yeah. Well, you look at where we go, what that does to the East is it takes the Pacers off the table. Now they weren't. I don't think the Pacers were going to go to the finals under any circumstances, but they're pretty much officially off the table now.
Oh yeah,
leaving
sure.
Boston, Philadelphia, and Toronto,
and the Bucks,
and Milwaukee alone, vying for that Eastern Conference
because the Pacers
spot in the finals.
I mean, it's honestly really depressing for all Pacers fans. They were having an amazing season.
Yeah.
They're third in the Eastern Conference right now, and it's just kind of unfortunate that he's going to be out for the rest of the season. And let's hope he can make a recovery and doesn't turn out like a lot of players where they never recover from injury.
Yeah. Well, we'll finish this up and we'll come back next week and talk about whatever's going on. Then we'll have the Super Bowl come up. We'll make our picks next week. But that was the first episode of Take Two, where we'll just basically argue about sports. Thank you all for listening.